assumed no force could challenge you. And now, finally, we have returned.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stellaris Developer Diaries. The first Developer Diary since the summer holidays has now dropped. Developer Diary 261 is out, and we are finally getting some details on the now announced Fornax update. That's the Stellaris 3.5 patch, the next patch which we don't yet have a deadline on a release for, but we are thankfully getting some details. There are some major, and I really do mean major, changes coming to the difficulty settings for the game that is really going to help us fine-tune and find the exact difficulty we're going to want to play at. In addition to that, I'm also going to cover Developer Diary 259, which was released in the middle of the summer, and go through all of the proposed changes coming to the Relics, because Relics are getting an overhaul with Stellaris patch 3.5. So stick around for my opinion on that. But without any further ado, let's dive in and find out what's going on. There are new difficulty settings incoming to Stellaris. So, with all the improvements that have been made to the AI over the past few updates, and I can definitely vouch for this, there are some fantastic improvements that have been made. The devs have noticed that new players are finding things a bit more challenging, and there have been some requests for an easier difficulty setting below the current easier setting, which is Cadet. Now, Cadet difficulty setting, how is that different to the regular Ensign game? Well, in the Cadet setting, at the moment, you get some small bonuses as the player, making the game slightly easier for you than the AI empires. What they're going to be doing now, though, is making a new civilian difficulty setting, which is a setting below even that of the previous Cadet, which has some, and I'm quoting them here, massive bonuses to the economy as a player. Research and naval capacity will also get buffed, and you'll be getting a bonus to establishing new contacts. This is going to make the game even easier for those of you that have been really struggling. I know that there are some people out there that will be massively happy about this change, and I have to say, from an accessibility point of view, I can't see any issues with this. If you don't want to play civilian, you absolutely don't have to, so this is really a win-win. And if you're enjoying this video, please end the like button's holiday. And if you are on the complete other end of the spectrum, instead of needing the game to be easier, you'd actually like to challenge yourself more, or at least fine-tune the way in which you are challenged, don't worry, they've also got something coming for us. The devs are aware that most of us that read dev diaries are apparently looking for greater challenges rather than, as I've mentioned, the opposite. 2 new settings are being added to the game that will allow you to better customize the difficulty of your game. The first is a simple toggle scaling difficulty. Now it's going to be off, mid-game, or late game. The present edition of the game just has this as off or on. If you turn it off, that means all of the AI empires will get all of their bonuses right from the start of the game, whereas if you turn scaling at the moment to on, the AI empires will start with no bonuses and they will ramp up until they reach the end game year, at which point they will have their maximum bonuses, and this is a linear increase. So what we're going to have now is you're going to be able to choose whether the AI reaches the maximum difficulty level that you've set by the mid-game year or the end game start year. This is going to mean we have a little bit more variability, we have more choice when it comes to how we want the AI to behave against us. Whether we want to have these bonuses immediately, somewhat part of the way through, or quite scaled off into the future. So I am actually really happy with this change. Anything that increases player choice and increases our ability to play the game, I think is a fantastic addition. They've also added another modifier. This is called the Difficulty Adjusted AI modifier. What does it do? Well, it's a new toggle that will dramatically increase the strength of the AI on higher difficulty levels as the game progresses. If you enable it, the AI bonus applies to all other modifiers the AI accumulates. For example, with the geothermal fracking technology, that grants a plus 20% bonus to minerals from miners. If you are on Grand Admiral difficulty with this setting enabled, the technology will instead grant AI empires a 40% bonus. So basically, if you're finding the AI empires are too weak, This allows the AI to kind of cheat more and get even more bonuses, though be warned, I think this would mean that if you manage to vassalize AI empires with Grand Admiral, that really would make the game much easier, as on Grand Admiral, with this difficulty adjusted AI modifier turned on, it is probably beneficial to turn an AI empire into a vassal and then extract the maximum amount of resources from that vassal, because you would probably make more than if you as a player simply took those worlds yourself, given all of the bonuses the AI can get. And then we come to the final teensy little change they've made to the difficulty settings. And what is that one? Well, you might have already heard about this one. I've pretty much foreshadowed it and basically told you outright what is coming, but we're now getting a setting where the crisis type, instead of choosing a specific crisis type or a random crisis type, you can now choose the all crisis. That then means every single crisis will spawn sequentially with no more than one happening at any specific time.
We're all gonna die!
But if you're looking for another challenge in Stellaris, if you've already beaten the game on 25 times crisis mode, this should be the icing on the cake. And every crisis that spawns will be more powerful and stronger than the previous crisis. The example that I've seen given by Mr. Freak somewhere down in the comments, I believe, or maybe it was on the Discord, was that a 25x crisis, well, the final crisis will be 55 times, not 25 times. So if you're looking for a challenge, give this a go. I'm definitely going to be trying this very soon in a video once patch 3.5 comes out. It's going to be pretty wild. Overall, I think these difficulty changes are both interesting and quite nice to have in the game as extras. I think it's always good to increase the replayability, but also to be able to fine-tune the kind of game you want to play, the kind of powers or the kind of opposition you want to face from the computer opponents. I think that's going to be really helpful for many players out there, myself included. And at this point, I would like to say a massive thank you to all of my channel members and patrons. Without your support, I would have been completely unable to make this move to full-time on YouTube, so I really can't thank you enough for your contributions. If you'd like to become a channel member or patron and support this channel, there are links down below in the description. I actually now have a completely updated new Patreon page, which offers some unique tiers and fantastic rewards that you can't find anywhere else. So if you're interested, go and check it out by following the link down below in the description. We are also going to be getting some new achievements. These are going to be specific species pack achievements in the game. So if you've completed all of the achievements already, well, don't worry, there are some more achievements incoming. We've already seen the art for some of these, but now we're going to find out what we're going to be getting. So the devs have always enjoyed making achievements. They've always found them a bit tongue-in-cheek. Now they're going to be including 3 new achievements being added for each species pack that has been previously released. While Stellaris achievements traditionally are always very careful to not require cross DLC, they haven't enforced this restriction here, as they did feel that, well, with most of these species packs, if you've got species packs, you probably have a lot of other things. Whether or not I entirely agree with that, I'm not sure. I think that sometimes people, and I know I did this, will get a few species packs, but not all of them. There are kind of different things, different DLC you tend to get in different orders. So the logic there, I don't entirely agree on. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with having some of the achievements require multiple DLC. That means for those of us with all of the DLC, or at least those specific DLC, we're going to get some little goodies, some little Easter eggs, which I think is kind of nice. Now, what are these achievements? They haven't released what all of the achievements are going to be. They've only given us an example for each species pack. So the first one here, Aquatics, will be the Fishing for Trouble achievement. As an angler empire, you need to provoke a fallen empire into declaring war on you and then win that war. I think that's a fun little achievement with some lovely little artwork. We've got one of those deep sea fish, which has quite a funny little pop on the end of it. For those of you that remember the fantastic mobile game Plants vs Zombies, well, don't worry, they have an achievement for you. If you have the Necroids pack along with the Plantoids pack, you get the There's a Zombie on My Lawn. As a Necroid empire, you need to eradicate a Plantoid empire or vice versa without blowing up their final planet. For the lithoids, we have the rock beats paper. As a lithoid empire, you should show the galactic community exactly what you think of that strongly worded letter. I, of course, have never been in breach of galactic law. I'm an upstanding galactic citizen, so I would have no idea what on earth the strongly worded letter reference could mean here. If you have the humanoid species pack, the Strange Mood achievement is for you. As a master crafter empire, you should fully construct a megastructure whilst you also have a covenant with a shroud entity. Basically, if the warp gods are involved, it's all a plus. The final achievement they're showing off is for the Plantoid species pack. It's called DIY. As an idyllic bloom empire, you should convert the junk worlds of the Kettling Star pack into Gaia worlds. I mean, that's just a kick in the teeth for any Kettlings around, though I think overall it could be an interesting one to try to pick up. And I definitely like how it will force, or at least if you want to get all the achievements, if you're an achievement hunter, you will have to play with extra empire types, maybe some empire types that would be a little outside your normal comfort zone with some of these civics that you might not normally choose, like idyllic bloom here. I think that's always good if we widen the variety of playstyles and allow people to experience more of the game. I really feel that should be the purpose of achievements, so I think this one works very nicely. But what do you think about these new proposed changes, not just to the difficulty settings, but also these new achievements coming in? Let me know down in the comments below. Now don't run away just yet. Whilst that might be the end of this Dev Diary, there is some Dev Diary content I haven't actually caught up on and commented on yet, and that's some of the Dev Diaries that were released over the summer. Now, why is that important? Well, next week we're going to be getting a compiled update on relic changes based on our feedback, so I think it'd be a good idea to cover the proposed relic changes from Dev Diary 259, which came out all the way back in July. I'm going to briefly blast through Dev Diary 259 so you can hear about what the proposed changes are, giving us some up-to-date information going into next week's Dev Diary. The Crisis relics are definitely going to be getting a change. First up, the Praetorian Brood Queen, which currently costs 10,000 food to activate and gives 30, yes, you heard me, as little as 30 society research and a small Praetorian fleet, is going to be updated to give us a whopping 50% society research speed along with a sizable Praetorian fleet. And that should be a nice change. Though it's still not as powerful as some of the other proposed changes we're going to be getting. When it comes to the precursor relics, some of them were already very, very powerful in their own right, but the point of this was actually to tune them in the early game, because they were very powerful in the early game with their power kind of receding as you get further and further. A great example of this is the new Bowel life seeding. How has it been changed? Well, basically, we're now going to be getting a cooldown or a time to enact of 1,800 days, so you don't just simply get a Gaia world straight off the bat. The pops you're going to be getting from it will also have the ability now to be hive-minded. If you're a hive mind, that's a great benefit. But on top of that, you'll also get a special and unique Gaia World habitability type with some special Gaia World bonuses, meaning that even in the late game, it is still advantageous to be using this decision on your planets. And the Cybrex Warforge, which has been beloved by many for a long, long time, has been changed as well, or proposed to be changed. Previously, you would spend 10,000 minerals and some influence, or in this case with the current patch Unity, and get 5,000 alloys. You'd also have the ability to build Cybrex Warforms, which are pretty much the best army type in the game. Now, the Warforms aside, because that isn't going to be changing, what is going to be changing is the way the relic provides your alloys. Now, every time you activate it, the amount of mineral intake needed will be going up as time goes on, starting off a very small amount of only 2,000 minerals and providing 1,000 alloys. This means as the game goes on, as long as you keep using the Cybrex Warforge, it will be scaling up and it will be improving and increasing both the amount of mineral intake it gets as well as the alloy output. I think this is a good idea and a good attempt to achieve some balance with this relic during the different points of the game. We will of course have to see how this boils down, how this rattles out next week in the Dev Diary. They are also going to improve one of the worst relics in the game, and that's the Javorian Pox sample. All of the previous benefits pretty much are now wrapped up in the passive effects, and the active effect will give you a whopping 50% research speed to biology, making this quite a powerful relic actually. Going through the rest of the list, the Yut Cryo Core, its passive, gives +1 pop on every colony. Now it will do that, and in addition, give us a +20% energy weapon fire rate, which is really, really good in the early and mid game. Or at least any time before you've got repeatables. The Zroni Relic, or the Psionic Archive, is now going to do something a little bit different. The passive will unlock an edict granting leader XP, life, and accident prevention for some Zro upkeep. You'll get +5 ruler max level, minus 50% shroud cooldown, and better shroud odds, so it is still very useful for an empire taking the Psionic chain, meaning for hive minds and machine empires, it is pretty crap. However, the active is somewhat better now. The knowledge option will now level up your ruler instead of granting a flat XP bonus, because when you activate it, it kind of functions like a mini shroud interaction. The Voltaeum Reality Perforator will, instead of granting its buffs for only a single year, now last between 1 to 5 years. I hope this is tuned up even further, because that really doesn't seem like much of an additional benefit. Blade of the Huntress, which I already thought was a very powerful relic, is getting a crazy cool bonus in that the passive will now grant you, instead of +2 planet sensor range, plus 20% diplomatic weight, which as a Diplo player, as someone who already liked Blade of the Huntress for its active ability granting you plus 25% sublight speed, I think that is wildly powerful. The Omni Codex has been updated to allow hive minds to actually use it. The Ether Drake trophy will also add 10 stability to every planet, not just 10% happiness, making it very, very powerful. The Surveyor has been somewhat downgraded. Instead of granting or possibly granting 3 to 5 rare resources among other deposits, it can now grant 1 to 3 rare resource deposits. I think that is quite good. In some ways, the Surveyor is a little overpowered, especially early in the game, or possibly very, very late in the game if you run out of space to build your habitats on and you need some extra bonuses there. The Isolated Contingency Core has been buffed to give you +1 to megastructure construction capacity. I think that probably makes it pretty much the best of the 3 Crisis relics. Why do I say that? Well, the other Crisis relic, the Extra Dimensional Warlock, it's been improved to now give you additional jump drive range. That's pretty much the same as before, but a reduction to jump drive cooldown and some increased accuracy to the quantum catapult I would assume you're probably not using. The passive gives you plus 20% weapons range, which, yes, additional weapons range is good, and that is nice to have here. And given you can't really get a repeatable for it, I think that's really good in a combat-specific way, although generally speaking, I don't think at this point that extra buff of 20% is necessarily going to be the difference between victory and defeat for you and your empire. And that is all of the proposed changes to the relics that we've heard about so far. The others that I have not talked about up till this point, that is because they're not getting changed. Overall, I think a rebalancing of the relics is definitely needed. I definitely think with some of the big changes we've had to the game over the last year and some of the massive improvements to the AI and to other systems in the game, it is very necessary to rebalance certain things. For example, I tend to find that the Khan, the Great Khan, if it ever spawns, and I'm playing on Admiral or Grand Admiral, is completely stomped by the first AI that it meets, thus meaning it's pretty much no longer a threat. And if you're not next to it, you'll generally find that you can't even get to the other side of the galaxy and defeat it in time before the other AI empires can. I definitely think there should be a buff to the Great Khan depending on the difficulty you're playing the game with. Of course, if you're on Ensign difficulty, it is not a good idea to buff the Great Khan further because you probably aren't going to be handling it all that well, and neither are the AI. But on something like Grand Admiral, I think the Khan should definitely be getting more bonuses than it currently is. We've looked at the new updated effects we're going to be getting from relics in Stellaris. If you'd like to know what I think about the current relics and where I'd rank them in a tier list, you should click the video on screen now.